beautiful autumn day and I've come down to one of my favourite venues, Barlow Country Club, not too far from Chesterfield, for a short session targeting everything that swims. So, we're going to kickstart the swim with just a little nugget of ground bait. I've got the squeeze ready here. All I'm going to do, I'm going to put that in a little bait tub, got one here, and to that I'm only going to literally mix up what I need, which is one little nugget, which is all I want to basically kickstart the peg today. I'm just going to add a sprinkling of the sweet Sensate powder, literally half a teaspoon. So, the beauty of this stuff, obviously you don't need loads of it, so I'd rather put in just what I need and keep the rest in the bag. So look, that's just one little nugget. The water's cool, the water's clear. I don't want to put too much in, but I do want to put a little bit of attraction on the bottom just to draw in some fish to start the session. I'm also just going to put in palm full, about, I don't know, 20 bronze maggots. I've just added a little bit of the yellow Sensate powder to them, but I'll tell you more about that as we get fishing. So this is just me really wanting to kickstart the peg, get some fish in, and then we'll see what we can catch, and we'll try and read what's happening. Now, something I always do a bit different to most anglers, when I'm feeding ground bait, I'll feed it ever so slightly short of where I'm fishing. I always like to fish ever so slightly on the back edge of my ground bait. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. I think if you present your hook bait right in the middle of your feed area, often it doesn't stand out. Whereas if you present it on the back edge of where you've been feeding, you tend to find it stands out a little bit better compared to everything around it, and you'll get a faster bite. So that's the theory behind that. Right, so let's start the session. Now, I've set up a few rigs today. I'll talk you through what I've set up and why as we get going. But I'm starting off fishing basically over that ground bait on the bottom. But I am going to lose feed quite aggressively, and the reason is there's only us on the lake here today. There's not much angling pressure on, and I want to really pull in every fish that's in the lake. That's my theory. So although I'm fishing on the bottom, straight away I'm going to pick up that catapult and begin to loose feed maggots around my float. Now the sun, oh, a little bite straight away there. That's a tiny fish. Nice start though, and as you can see, already we've begun to lose feed, because I know what always happens this time of year is small fish will find your bait first, but if you get them competing, you'll soon be able to draw bigger fish into the peg as well. So that was actually on a single hook bait, that one. I just put one maggot on. But because we've had that tiny fish, I'm going to try and be a shade more selective and put 2 maggots on the hook. Now, I have bought 2 different types of hook bait with me today. We've got the maggots which I'm fishing with at the moment, and I've also got sweet corn. And sweet corn's just there for basically if we want to sort out some better fish. I know that there's carp in here, there's tench, there's golden tench. There really is all sorts to go at. So I want to read what's in the peg, and then I can be selective if I need to, if I'm not catching the right stamp fish. Now, I'm using some old bait up today. I've got a real mix of everything. I've got maggots. Oh, that's a nice little bite then. Now, straight away, I'm thinking fish are moving at all levels in the water. I think there's some fish shallow. I think there's fish definitely mid-water. And I'm hoping that where I put that ground bait, there's also a few fish on the bottom. So no indication as yet. Now, I'm not too worried. I saw a couple of movements as that bait sort of sunk through the water, so I know there's fish mid-water. But I'm actually happy if it gets down to the bottom and not go under straight away. Sometimes that means a better fish is down there and waiting. It's almost like if a carp's in the peg or a tench or a bigger fish, you might actually move some of the small fish out of the way. That's a little indication. We'll wait for a proper bite. Bear in mind we've got that more selective hook bait on of 2 maggots here, so we are trying to pick out something slightly better. Not forced to work, of course, but we're trying. There we are, that went under then. No bite. Lay it in again. And as I said, I am, for the first part of the session, I'm not going to have that catapult out my hand too often, folks. So really I'm going to be feeding quite aggressively with a view to pulling. There we are, that was a nice bite. Small fish again though. The idea is we're going to pull in fish of all different sizes, and then later on we'll be able to be more selective and sort out the better ones. But just a word or two about bait. Now, I mentioned I'm using up some old bait today, and some of these maggots are quite small, which is why you'll see that the bait's really sort of spreading out over a bit of an area. But what I have added to my hook bait today, and my feed bait for that matter, all the bait, is a generous amount of Sensate powder. I've actually added the yellow Sensate powder because I'm fishing mainly with bronze maggots on the hook. I'll lay that rig in. I'm going to try and give it 2 pouches of bait now. 1. No, there's quite a few of them small maggots. Do mean that bait's actually, oh, that was a nice bite. It's a slightly better fish. Still not a big fish, but slightly better in size. Come off that one. There we are. Bait's not marked. You do sometimes find that the early part of the session can be a little bit scatty, so I never worry too much if the first sort of for 10-15 minutes are just spent building. I always call it building the peg. Now, interesting, I don't know whether you saw that, but that float went straight away on the drop, and there's actually a fish on. That pulled the elastic out, that did. So that's either a bigger roach, that's a really big roach. I know there's all sorts on here, there's chub, there's bream, but that fish was definitely on the drop, so let's see what it is. Nice if it's one of the big chub that live in here. I don't think it is. It looks more like a roach to me, but we'll see. Still definitely a good sized fish. That literally pulled the elastic out as the rig was settling. Oh, it's trying to go around some. Wow, that's a lovely fish to start with. Look at that, folks. That's got to be a roach of. That's got to be close to a pound. Certainly 12 ounce anyway. Look at him. Look where he's hooked. And that, I don't know whether you saw that on the bite cam, but that literally had that bait as it was falling through. So already, even though that's the best fish of the day, we're actually going to make a little bit of a change to what we're doing. All right, so I'm unhooking him. Beautiful roach. And I'm thinking, I want to be fishing through the water. I want to be fishing higher up in the column. So I mentioned I've set some different rigs up. We'll run through rigs at the end because that's the boring bit, but I'll just tell you what I'm changing to. And I'm actually changing to a rig set about half depth, about halfway down in the column. I'm just going to put a single maggot on this time. Same hook and everything. Again, we'll go through tackle later, but the fact that that grabbed that bait as it fell makes me want to catch through the water column, all right? Now, I do change a couple of things when I start fishing shallow, and the first thing I change is when I feed. I always like to try and get the fish feeding before I get out there with my catapult. So a couple of pouches of these maggots. There we are. And out we go. Let's just see if those fish are mid-water. So when you're fishing shallow, I always like to lay my rig in a straight line and hang on to it. You're almost fishing on the drop, as I like to call it. So keep everything as tight as you can. I try not to actually move the float. That was a little dink then. Try not to actually move the float. But what I do want is basically a tightish line so that if I get a bite, I can strike. Like you saw then, that fish almost hooked itself, not quite. Laying again, and now I'm going to start loose feeding. Now, I'm not entirely surprised. It was awful feeding, that was. As I said, I am using the size of this bait as a little bit of an excuse today. There's a lot of small bait mixed in here. There we are. Now you'll notice how aggressive I'm being. Now I know that there's mixed sizes of fish there. I know that the fish are feeding shallow. I'm really happy to start caning some bait in. I think it's important when you're catching small fish. There's an old saying in fishing about when this sort of thing's happening, and people or older anglers often talk about feeding fish off or feeding small fish off, and it's slightly misleading. I don't believe you ever fill them up. I don't think it's a case of, you're filling the small fish up and then the big fish are arriving. What's actually happening, I think, is you're getting the commotion of the small fish in your peg, and that in turn is bringing in bigger fish. That's how it works in my opinion. Right, I have got in this left hand tub here some slightly bigger maggots, so I'm just going to do what I did before. I'm going to feed before I drop in. Just feed some of these bronzes here. 2 pouches of them around the float. There we are, right. And we're in. So again, I'm just holding on to that. Nice and tight. And often you'll find a depth where the fish want to feed, and you can tend to gauge where it is by how fast you get your bite. Like for example, if I'd have had a bite then, as soon as that rig touched the water, oh, it was a bite then, and I'd have known that them fish were really high in the water, but as it was, it sort of settled, and then I got a little dink, which makes me think the fish are sort of, there we are, that one's on. Not a massive fish, but a nice roach on the same. Well, it might have woke up a bit. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's another lovely roach. Now I'm happy at the moment in that obviously we're catching fish and got a couple of nice stamp fish, but I'm also mindful there's a lot more to go at in this lake than roach, so I do want to keep feeding something to give me the chance of catching on the bottom a little bit later as well, and that's going to be corn. So this time I'm going to feed some maggots to flick the rig into shallow, but I'm also going to put a few bits of corn in because I do really want to drop on that in a little while and just hopefully catch some bigger fish underneath them. So maggots, a couple of pouches of them. There we are. And corn, it's a little bit of corn. Now a lot of people would say, well, Tom, it's winter, what the hell are you doing? You're really attacking it. I am, but we can at the moment because we know there's mixed sizes of fish there and we're trying to kickstart the swim early in the day. I say it's winter, we're in mid-October. It was cold last night, probably 6 or 7 degrees, but it's warmer now, middle of the day. And it's amazing these last few years how many days we've had like this in winter really, or late autumn, spring. It's like very, very few extremely cold days. And I do tend to find that you can be reasonably aggressive with your loose feed right through the year. Get fish competing and then go from there. So, lay that in again. When you're shallow fishing or fishing through the water, once your rig's settled, you really are as well, oh that was a lovely bite, you really are as well laying it in again. I'm happy to sometimes sit for a few seconds, but I rarely want to wait for too long because I'm a big believer that you've got to make your bait appear as natural as possible. Nice long line to keep the pole tip away from the float. There we are, just holding on to that as it falls through the water. Now interestingly, it's gone a little bit quiet, so it might be that we need to pick up the deck rig again. I hope we do. There might be some better fish underneath the shallow fish maybe. But you can see, now I know that this fish here, these mouths in the peg as I always like to call it, I'm very happy to be aggressive. That's a nice stamp fish, whatever it is. Was on the drop. It was definitely quieter that time, so we could either have to net that one. It's another lovely roach. Look at them. Can't be angry catching them, folks. They're great. Right, okay. Let's drop back down on the bottom and see what's there. The other option we've got, of course, we could add depth to this rig. We could try catching a little bit deeper on this one. Always an option. I do just feel that there might be some bigger fish underneath. Obviously we put that bit of ground bait in at the start. That just gave us something to fish over. We've got corn as a reserve as well, of course, if we want to try and pick out something bigger. You do catch some big roach on corn as well though, so it's not like roach don't eat it. I want to say a few things about that powder and why I think it's so effective when it comes to winter fishing generally, but specifically this approach really. Now, adding it to the maggots as I have done, basically you do two things. You obviously boost the bait with regard to, well, that was a bite then as it settled, so this might be a good move going down the bottom. Obviously you boost the attraction of the bait, Sensate, proven to get you more bites, but the thing I like about it is how it disperses in the water column as it falls. So as you can see, I'm set up to fish at all levels today, from sort of shallow to down on the bottom. And when you look at how that powder behaves in the water, a lot of it sort of comes off as the bait falls through. It sinks. I think it pulls fish down. So to me, obviously you've got your maggots falling through the water, but then you've also got your powder falling through with them and pulling fish down, which is absolutely perfect really for what we're trying to achieve. That's how I want it. I want basically active bait in the water column for fish to eat. We're back on the half depth rig just because we've seen a couple of big swirls. Now, it might even be that there's some carp there or some bigger fish up in the water. Let's get back in and try and catch another. We're getting halfway out. I'll just stop there. Now to pull pouch full of bait. Now if it was a match today, I would have been much more particular about another small fish fella just on the near side of where the bait's going. It's a rudd. We're getting some different species. Yeah, I would be much more particular in a match situation about size of bait, but for a pleasure session, folks, really. You know, wow, that's another tidy fish. This proves how many's in here, how many mouths. That's a perch, believe it or not, shallow. So I know what I'm going to do this time. I'm not going to give myself the chance to... give myself the chance to actually dangle a bait where a fish can take it before I feed. And hopefully, when we get out there, there'll be a big roach waiting. There we are. So we're fed in the column. Out we go. Flick it in. Now, I don't even notice what I've done there, but I've actually flicked that past the pole tip. That's a really nice little trick. Keeps everything tight, but it's amazing how often you find the bigger fish. A little bite as it settled there. It's amazing how often you find the bigger fish do sit just past where you're feeding. As I said, you've got constant column of Sensate attractant, maggots, and some of these are that small, they're like pinkies falling through. But the fish aren't daft, they will always wise up and sit past when they can. Now I'm anxious today. If I was just after roach, I'd definitely scale down. I'd be maybe dropping down to an 07 or an 08 hook length, but as I say, I know what's in here. There's a real multitude of different species. There's some lovely carp, F1s, tench. I don't want to scale down and then hook something. Wow, now that's interesting. We've missed 3-4 bites there on the trot. So in a second, if that happens again, I'm going to actually come even shallow. If you're missing bites, well, that was an interesting feeling fish. That didn't feel like a roach. That I'm going to come back. I'm going to feed once more. I'm actually going to come back and check that hook bait's all right. As I said, if I miss a bite or if anything like that happens, hey, we've hooked something that time. Now that don't feel like a roach. Or if it is, it's a big roach. That's a really big roach if it is a roach. I thought I bumped something I put in before, but oh, that's a lovely fish. This is a roach, I think. Wow. Look at that. That's awesome. They are incredible. That's got to be close to a pound, that fish. Look at him. Absolutely gorgeous. Right. Slip him in the net. It's interesting that we've only really caught sort of roach up today. It might be that the stocking of this lake's changed a little bit. I know they have been making some changes down here at Barlow. We're talking to Alan Sanders, the guy who sort of runs the shop, who was telling me they've been moving some fish around. I think they had a leak on the dam above here, the lake above it, and so they put more fish in than actually took some out. And also they've got a new match lake open, which looks like it's got a brilliant head of silvers in it. So whether they've moved some of the other fish around, I'm not sure, or whether they're just not feeding today. Either way, I mean, roach of that size, we really can't moan. Oh, that was a lovely bite. It's interesting, even though, as I said, we're heading into winter now, it's clear. The water itself is freezing. I felt that when I sat down this morning, and it's really cold. The fish are still keen to come up in the water. It's a mistake to think that in winter you can't catch shallow. I've had some great days roach fishing shallow in winter. Again, we've just had that problem again of missing a couple of bites, so coming shallow is on my mind, to be honest. Oh, fast bite there. It could be tiny fish then, but I'm a typical angler. I always imagine if I miss a bite, it's a great big one, and I think it normally is. The cleverest ones give them little fast dinks and you miss. No, that's settled, lift and drop, that'll lift. All right, let's just try coming even shallower. There's some fish there. Be interesting to see if we can catch some more of them big roach. Right. There we are, it's going down even shallower. Probably only fishing about 2 foot deep now. We'll keep trickling a little bit of corn in as well. I do want to just try underneath, see if any better fish are there. So I know there used to be a brilliant head of all sorts of different fish in here. There we are. So as I said, we're just going to keep putting a few bits of corn in. So we know there's something on the bottom. We've only shallowed up probably about 8 or 10 inches there, so it'll be interesting. Oh yeah, that might answer the question as to what the fish were that were feeding shallow. So probably the smallest, or other than that perch, the smallest fish of the day, and it's a rudd again, so we'll not be hanging about at this depth if that's all that was there. We can try the bottom again, we can try deeper. It really is all about working it out and building that column of bait through the water. A little flick in, try and keep a nice tight line between pole tip and float. I also like to keep the pole tip away from the float where I can. And again, look, a little tiny fish, isn't that interesting? So at that shallower depth where we are now, it looks like the fish are really small. Let's just drop down a shade deeper again. So what might be happening is, folks, we're missing those bites from them tiny fish in the very upper layers. And the better fish are underneath them. Let's just see. What I love about this, and you can probably see from how I'm doing it, is you're constantly thinking. It's a real nice way to spend a session, because A, it's active, you're always feeding. You're using that powder to really pull everything in. And it's full of surprises, you know, fishing a venue like this, a mixed fishery, and there's loads of them about like this. A bit of everything in it, where you don't know what your next bite's going to be. I mean, again, we've not had any of the bigger fish yet, but some clonking roach, perch, rudd. Oh, what's that? See, we drop down that bit deeper. That might be another better roach, that. I think it is, you know. Lovely. 6 ounce. Just goes to show, doesn't it, how fish can sit at different levels. Who would have thought that by shallowing up that sort of 12 inches, we'd have caught tiny fish, and that the bigger fish are sat in that middle part of the water column. We're going to have to add a try on the bottom on the sweet corn in a minute. So I really want to know if there's anything bigger underneath. One question I get asked all the time is, which Sensate powder should I use when? Well, we've now got 7 in total in the range. So here's a little guide. Now, the easiest to explain, and the one thing that all these 7 have got in common, is this stuff. This is just Sensate in its natural form. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Sensate. What it does, it makes fish feed. It gets your bites quicker. It's just an excellent attraction that disperses in the water column and incites fish into feeding. This is Sensate in its natural form. So add this to white maggots, add it to ground bait. It won't change the colour, but it will add Sensate attractant. This is Sensate Red, all right? Now, this is one of the first ones we actually launched, and it's my favourite additive of all time, this one. Add it to red maggots to give them an extra sort of red tinge. Add them to ground bait, and again, you'll get red flecks in your ground bait, which really does stand out well on the bottom. And you can add it to porous baits like meat if you want to actually dye them red. Now, this won't dye, for example, white maggots red. The only way you can do that is actually feed them on red food. That's how maggot farms produce red maggots. But it will make red maggots redder, all right? So the red Sensate powder, it adds Sensate attraction and red colourant. There's 2 more now that I'm going to talk about, which are a little bit different to the others. Okay, this is the betaine green. Obviously perfect for use with green baits like shrimp stim green, or you can use it to dye meat green if you want to. It's also got added betaine in it, which is a great sort of big fish attraction and holding bait. So I'd say this would be my go-to if it was sort of bigger carp that I was looking for. The other one that's a little bit different with regard to big fish is the halibut Sensate powder. Like all our halibut range, this has got added big fish ingredients in that really pull carp and barbel into your peg and get them feeding. But as with all these, at its heart is the Sensate, so it will get your bites quicker. Okay, there's a couple of others this end. There is 2 sweet powders, all right? The original and the dark. Now, the reason we've done this is in winter, we know a lot of anglers like to fish with dark ground baits. So adding a yellow powder would be a little bit counterproductive. So when we launched the Sensate sweet powder a few months ago, the idea was you can add this to dark ground baits. It's not going to change the colour, but it will add extra sweet attraction. And with both of these, because we've got that sweet additive in there, which gives them a lovely sort of brasamy, caramelly almost smell to them, perfect for skimmers, perfect for F1s. And over the next few months in winter, these 2 will be getting a lot of use. We've then got the yellow Sensate dye. Now, this is very similar to the red, which I've talked through already, except obviously it's yellow in nature. So add this to bronze maggots, it makes them more bronzy, if you will, and you get that lovely colour coming off in the water column as it falls through. So a brilliant additive to bronze maggots. Right, folks, just a little update as to what's been going off. Now, we have tried the corn line, again, on the bottom out there, and we've not had a bite. Now, I've been sort of racking my brains as to why I think that is. And the interesting thing today is there doesn't even seem to be many roach to catch on the bottom. I've put double maggot on that line, on the deck, and I've really sort of struggled to catch any roach there. And as you can see on this line, shallow, it's really, really nice roach fishing. We're catching really nicely. So what that's led me to sort of think is the fish probably don't want to sit in that deepest water. So I've actually replumbed, that's a lovely roach, I've actually replumbed a line in slightly shallower water, and I've got this lovely bed of lilies to my right-hand side, to my left-hand side, sorry. I've just put literally 4 bits of corn and a tiny little pinch of squeeze ready ground bait on that line. And first drop in, I've had a carp. Only a small carp, but nonetheless a carp. Next put in, I've had a fantail. Now, I'm going to have my 3rd drop in now. and we'll see what happens. But all I can think is maybe the fish today, or the bigger fish, don't want to be on the bottom in that deeper water, and they're hanging in slightly shallow water. Now it's only maybe a foot shallower close in than out there, so it's not like there's a massive difference. It's really interesting that it seems there's that many more fish up the slope. So third time lucky. Let's see if we can catch one for the camera now. As I said, we've literally put the tiniest bit of bait on that line. It's slightly shorter, so I'll just take that section off. See if we can catch one. Now you'll see as well where I've actually put this line is almost over the top of the lilies. There's two reasons for that. I've said already that that water is really clear. Oh, that's a little dink straight away as it settled then. So you see straight away that water is clear. And I think that the beauty of doing this is not only will them lilies block the sort of, oh, that was a bite on corn, you see that? Not only will them lilies block the silhouette of the pole, but also if I hook a fish, I can sort of guide it around the side of the lilies. Oh, prick one then, I don't know if there was a roach or what, but you've seen that. 2 bites there on the bottom, on sweet corn. And I don't know whether we had any in the deep water. So, the fact we've got a super bright hook bait, I mean corn, you don't get much better when it comes to selective autumn winter baits, I don't think. It's bright, it's visual, don't fill the fish up. It's a real confidence bait. I know a lot of anglers who hate corn, but for me, there's nothing I'd sooner have on the hook when a winter carp's the target. I think as well, the fact that we've got that Sensate powder on it means we're putting a lot of attraction in the water, but without actually filling the fish up on this line. So it's an interesting little development. Would we have caught maybe feeding some squeeze ready micros down there with an expander pellet? Maybe, but there's not been that many roach and other fish. I think this is probably quite a nice little way of doing it. Hopefully we'll get another bite. Oh, that's a nice little dink. What's that? That, believe it or not, it is another fish that I think that's a chub. Or a skimmer. Lovely bite. Not a roach, put it that way. It's a skimmer, I think. Oh, it's a lovely little dink. Lovely fish. Look at him. He's been in the wars. Probably a pound skimmer, I'm saying, on the corn. Gnarly old thing he is. Right. One more little feed on that line. And let's see if we can't catch another carp or a brown goldfish. We've had a real species hunt when I think about it today. I've had carp, we've had carp, skimmers, roach, rudd, perch, even had a gudgeon on the long line. Just another little pinch of the squeeze ready. A couple of bits of corn, not too much bait at all there. Oh, that was a lovely bite, that. That was a carpy bite if ever I saw one. Oh, and he's still there. Last time I came here, and it's worth having a look back, folks, it's a brilliant video. We did shoot it in summer. Oh, little indication. But have a look back, it's a couple of years ago. It's on this channel, on the Fuga Fishing TV channel. We actually came with Tommy Pickering here, and we blindfolded him. It was a bit of a mystery day. We didn't tell him where we were going. We just launched the 2-in-1 micros at that point. We had a lovely day catching fish on them. Come on, nice fast bite over there. There we are. That feels like a better fish. Whether it's a carp, do you know what? Don't believe that could be a huge roach, that. Huge roach on the corn, wow. We've had one good one on this. It didn't look as big as this one though. It's a really nice fish, that is. Wow. I'll keep it away from... You can't be disappointed at that, can you? Trying to come around the edge of the GoPro stand. Look at them. Absolute corker. Even putting his fin up, look. Right. I shouldn't do this, but I am. This is the last drop. This really is the last put in today, promise. I'm going to feed one more time with 3 bits of corn and a little pinch of ground bait. And then we'll have a look in the net and see what we've caught. Really quickly, run you through the rigs that I've used today. So, for the corn and fishing on the deck long, we've got 015 reflow power mainline. And that is a 4x12 RW Maggie with a 1.5mm hollow bristle. So, a nice sort of slim pattern that follows the fall of the bait through the water. And the shotting pattern reflects that. Just a little strung bulk there of number 10 shot down to a 6-inch hook length of 11mm reflow power and a size 16 Guru F1 pellet hook. Elastic on that is a pink hydro, so a nice sort of soft elastic to land anything we might hook. For the roach, same elastic, pink hydro. Probably would go a shade lighter as we move into winter and scale everything down, but obviously today we weren't sure what we were going to hook, so we had to hedge our bets a little bit. Nice long line on here, and the main line, by the way, is 013mm reflow power, so around about £4 main line. Float choice, it's a 4x10 original Preston Chianti. I've just got a strung pattern of number 11 shot down to a 6-inch hook length of 09 fluorocarbon and a size 18 Guru F1 pellet. Well, that's been a lovely session. Really interesting, some nice roach long. And a very interesting finish down the side. Not solid by any means, but we've had that big skimmer, we've had 2 big roach, a brown goldfish and a carp on that lily pad line. Definitely seems today that them bigger fish are hanging out that deepest water. Either way, wonderful fishing here at Barlow Country Club. I hope you've enjoyed the film, and I'll see you on the next one.